the like, and Jesse's now hello. Jesse's here. Hello.
Hello, thank you for having me.
It's nice to have you here. Some bright sunshiny pop on a day where there's not the sun is being battered by the winds and the rain.
Yeah, it's been rainy lately.
Yes. Hey,
Did you get,
sorry. Yeah.
I was gonna say, did you get the storm last night? There was a lot of thunder.
Yeah, it was amazing. So my wife was watching. I was on air, and my wife was watching as the hail was coming down, and those big hailstones. I don't know what you saw, but they were like 3 or 5 centimeter pieces of hail.
Wow.
Now, tell me about this song. Tell me about Quirky. Then I want to ask about some of the words as well.
Quirky, it's a song written in honor of the neurodivergent community, and also kind of like my younger self. I wasn't diagnosed till 20, so I spent a lot of my childhood not understanding why it felt like I was on a different frequency than others, and why I felt like I just didn't fit. And when you ask people, they all just go, "Oh, everybody struggles with that," and so you assume as a kid that everybody's just trying really, really hard like you, but they're just a lot better at it. And um, it was tough because you sort of try and guess like, oh well, maybe I'm just broken or something. And that's unfortunately a very common experience with neurodivergent people, and they try to find a way to explain why they have all these different traits and why their brain works differently, because you kind of feel alienated, and even though it's never explained to you. And a lot of parents, some of them try and go, oh, I never told my child about the diagnosis because I didn't want to have them use it as like an excuse or
Ah,
whatever. And I understand where they're coming from, but as like your child's gonna know no matter what, if you tell them or not that they're different. It's better that you tell them that their brain just works differently than have them try and guess like, oh, am I broken? Is there something wrong with me? But I wasn't, my parents didn't know. They knew I was different, but um they hadn't had me get a diagnosis. There's a lot of stigma around diagnosis, so I think they were afraid like it means that it's a negative thing, when that's not the case. And so I had to get diagnosed myself and take myself to doctors and things
yeah.
when I was 20, because the more responsibility I had, the more my traits became more obvious, because um, it uses more conscious effort to act neurotypical than to just be yourself. And
Right.
but
So you
yeah.
could you could identify that you were trying to act neurotypical. You could see that you were putting on a face, putting on an act.
Yeah, 100%. So you grow up and you kind of get it brainwashed into you that you shouldn't be the way that you are, because say I was very I was very like loud in a lot of classrooms during my later high school years, and it's always, oh, you talk too much, oh, Jessie, be quiet, like, oh, you speak too fast, oh, you do, and so you try and you think, oh, okay, I have to, and eventually you build up a mask, like even if it's subconsciously, where you go out into the world, but it takes a lot of energy to do. um, and to interact with others in a way that, oh, I'm not going to get um, slandered if I
Hmm.
sit still, if I answer this question as a scripted response, because in the past someone said this is how you're supposed to answer it, so then yeah, and but that eventually burns you out. And um, it's a great survival technique, but it's not good in the long run, because you have to do things like stim um,
Stim.
and
What's stim?
stimming is self-regulatory behavior that a lot of people, either on the spectrum or ADHD, or if you're both like me, you do it to release a lot of energy and to regulate your emotions. So you might see people on the spectrum rocking back and forth,
Of
clapping
course.
their
Yeah.
hands, doing things like that, that people are like, oh yes, that's unusual, haha. But it's it helps us release energy, because we take in a lot more sensory wise and emotional wise. um, so it helps us kind of like calm us and regulate our body, whereas neurotypicals don't have to do those kind of things, because they don't have the same kind of input that we have. We have our brains wired differently, and so if we don't stim and we don't be ourselves, and we're constantly masking, we're putting all this energy into being someone that is not completely us, and also suppressing a lot of our natural traits, and that then leads to things like burnout, depression, and a lot of things like that, which isn't very good.
And so then after being diagnosed, that must have felt like you could release, take the mask down, drop the act, but also it sounds like you then went and learnt a lot. You went and did a lot of reading, did a lot of researching to find out what it all meant.
Yeah, 100%. It was like such a relief, because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not broken. There's people, because you feel very lonely as well if you don't know that there's others like you out there. You kind of think that it's just you. And so I discovered like a whole community of people who are just like me, and who were like, it's okay to be different. And that was really handy. And learning how to take care of myself better was heaps good, because even if you look at the stuff I do, so prior to getting the diagnosis, my channel had 2 or 3 videos, but my productivity even grew, because I was a lot better at looking after myself internally, that everything externally grew as well, because it all kind of comes from within.
It also, I mean, you're looking at your YouTube channel or your TikTok channel and stuff. You use that for, well, a lot of fun, but also a lot of explaining, a lot of educating people, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's a really great tool for bringing people together, and the spreading awareness. But I love that you can do it in a really fun way, because someone might not want to sit down and listen to you ramble on about about what you want to say. But if you have a quick video that can pique someone's interest, that's really handy. And it's also good at showing those sides of you, because it's really good for that kind of thing. It's very expressive.
Is it also, I mean, is that where communities of people who might be neurodivergent, or any other communities of people who would feel left out of, in inverted commas, mainstream society, is TikTok, are those kind of places where those communities find each other?
Yes, it is. There's a lot of they call it mental health talk, and autistic talk, and all that kind of thing. And there's a lot of great creators on there that have very educational videos, but also you can watch a video and you can go, hey, that's me, and it's very cathartic in that way.
And that's good, because you hear a lot of, I guess, negative stuff about TikTok kind of cycling and spiraling people into dangerous kind of videos. But that sounds like the opposite happens as well.
Yeah, I think there's a balance. There's a balance of things. And the internet isn't always good, but I think it is really good for those who are outcast, and in finding people they feel that they can belong with.
Now let's talk about the actual music as well. The lyrics obviously very important and very educational. In fact, I think this could be played in classrooms. But it kind of reminds me of the music, this cool electronic sounds. It's I don't know, it reminds me of Architecture in Helsinki and other bands that I used to play when I was on Triple J. How did the music come together?
I really wanted to have something that was more pop than what I was doing previous to this song.
You do a lot of acoustic kind of things with other instruments, but obviously acoustic based.
Yeah, so I was listening to a lot of pop music around the time, where it wasn't so much in between, and I was like, I would love to get into this myself. And we had a guy at Damien Gerard Studios. He helped me do things on Pro Tools, so and do more of an electronic feel in comparison to before, where we would have more session musos and things that would work on the track, and we had electric guitar rather than acoustic, and my electric guitar isn't it was just one it was just one from the market. It had setup issues and stuff. We eventually got it to a good tune.
It did the job.
Yeah. And it had So originally I wrote it on acoustic just because that's usually what I play. Um, and I did a thing where I will strum and then I slap like the middle of the guitar for a beat. So we did that on the electric, but every time it would mute it instead. It kind of, that's how the unusual like beat
The
came about.
syncopated kind of beat.
Yeah.
Which you get to sing about in the song as well. It's interesting when you talk about that in the song as well. You talk about that you don't do relations. You're more into the music and the syncopation. Is that something that you find, being by yourself and making music is more you than hanging out with other people?
Yeah, I do. I feel like I can be most myself when I'm creating something. I have a very big drive for making all kinds of art. So, um, even if it's just like me painting props at home for my next
Hmm.
music video, I feel like that's um, when I'm being my most authentic self, and it comes more naturally to me to do the things I love and get lost in those than to um, communicate with others and socialize, obviously.
Hmm.
So,
Well, it's been probably a good time recently for that. Been not a
yeah,
lot of socializing, a lot of hanging out by yourself and potentially making props, but also doing TikToks.
yeah, I had been thinking about that. I was like, oh, this does kind of suck being locked in inside all the time, but I did think, well, if it wasn't happening there, I probably wouldn't be able to just like wall myself in my in my home and paint all the time and write things. Um, the same way, because I would have to like go out and talk to people more.
I'm talking to Jessie-May Kitchen. The song we just played was Quirky, and it's interesting seeing, I guess, more people being open about neurodiversity or neurodivergence, as you say. Do you think representation of that is better these days in mainstream media? I'm talking about shows like Sex Education and Atypical, sort of displaying all the different types of people that make up humanity.
Yes, I think there's a lot more representation, which is good, especially like how you say with TikTok. I think
Mm.
that's also like finding its way into other people's For You pages, and that kind of is like educating people, which is good too, because there was a lot of misconceptions about these labels in the media and our society. Um, the media kind of has had a history of incorrectly portraying over stereotyped characters, and we see
Mm.
them on our screens like Sheldon Cooper. I
Yeah.
love him. He's a walking stereotype.
Yeah. Well, when
from
I was growing up, there was Monk, who was like an investigator who was autistic in inverted commas. And then, of course, Rain Man, played by Dustin Hoffman, who I think would probably be embarrassed to have done that portrayal back in the 80s.
Yeah, see they it's nice they tried. I always try to be like
Yeah.
positive, but they a lot of the way that they portray them is as how it affects neurotypical people, and so they kind of portray it incorrectly because they make it as if um like, oh, we're just like hindering others with all these traits and we don't understand and things like that, but that couldn't be farther from the truth. A big misconception is that the spectrum is kind of like a linear occurrence, but it's more like a mixing desk where, like, say you have um, each autistic trait on a mixing desk. Someone's hypersensitivity to touch might be way up, while someone's ability to be vocal and verbal may be like really down, or it could be the total opposite, or it could be anywhere along that imaginary sound level for each and every trait. So people assume like, oh, autistic people, they don't have any empathy, and that's is a barrier for people when they want to get diagnosed and they look at all these stereotypes and they think, oh, but that's not me, so it can't be me. But for example, I have hyper empathy, which means I have extreme empathy and I'm more sensitive and in tune to people's emotions. And that's, you would think that goes completely against what the media tells us autism is, but um, it's, yeah, it's it's a whole range of of different things. And when you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. Like we're, you know,
I've
we're
never heard it
all
talked about like a mixing desk. That is such, being that I'm sitting in front of one, that is really quite appropriate representation for me right now for someone who enjoys a visual stimulus.